Looking at idol worship, if only you grew up in the church, then probably heard one of the 10 commandments in Exodus 20 verse. Do not make for yourself any graven image and or carved idols or woods as a form of worship, because it's against the will of God. And as far as I know, whenever the church talked of graven image, then they were referring to our ancestors and all the wooden or probably clay artifacts they had around them through which they could worship. So that's just probably one of the smallest form of wooden or carved image you would find on the market there. But when you look at our shrines or maybe family homes, even up to now, when you look at family stools, you realize there are a lot of carvings on them. For the chiefs, most of the time they have some kind of staff in their hand, or rod or stake, and it definitely has some kind of carving either of an animal or a human head or an old man, anything that is very symbolic to them. So and I think probably those times, because our focus was so much on our ancestors, thinking per what the church has told us that any form of carved image is a form of idol worship. Whenever they said that, we didn't even take time to really understand what idol is. So I just picked one definition from the dictionary that I would want us to look at. It says it's just an image of a god used as an object of worship. Now the focus is object of worship. Okay, so let's say, well, my ancestors didn't know the raw God, and so they chose to rely on smaller gods. That's the image of worship. Let's come back to the church. As far as I know, per what they told us of God, no one has seen God. But at least Jesus Christ came into the world to die for human sins. And throughout my time in church, especially Easter times, they'll show those Jesus movies where we see Jesus going through trials and tribulations to the point he was being whipped. And I remember those times I used to cry a lot, because I'm like, wow, this man is being beaten just for my sins. I'll cry, I'll weep. And I remember those days in church, when it's getting to that point, whoever was the facilitator will just pause the movie, so to allow us to soak into that moment, then make us pray, asking for forgiveness of sins and all that. And before you get home, you see the soup, the meat is attracting you and you're back to your old ways. And that's how we lived our lives, But not until a later time in my life did I realize that all those things we have seen on the movie were just actors. It's now we are even getting to know the names of some of these actors and realizing they were just human beings like us, and that were paid to act those roles, to make it a make-believe, just to get people's emotions and heart attached to what they see in the movie. And yes, so throughout Christianity, that is the kind of image they showed us of Jesus Christ. Unfortunately, all those times with the movies I saw of Jesus Christ, the character was always a white person. And I used to be very curious, and I would always ask, how come I'm in Africa, I'm a black person? Even those times you didn't know much about geographical locations and the fact that there were other races all over the world and all that. But I always ask myself, how come as a black person, it's always a white man with some straight falling hair, white face, long nose and all that, always having to act this movie to make me believe. And as much as I tried, I never found any answers. So every Easter would go back to that. And then in church also, when you're praying, they always tell you, think about the sacrifice of Jesus. Now the question is, if all your life the only picture of Jesus you've seen is a white person, when you are praying to ask for forgiveness of sins and you are being told to think of the image of Jesus in terms of what he did for the cross, on the cross for you, what would you think about? Obviously, it will always be this white man you saw on the cross. And now the question I want to ask is, if using that white face as a point of focus to get connected to God is not idol worship, then what it is? Because the point is, according to the Bible, no one has ever seen God. Yes, so God decided to take the form of a man in a white boy to be sacrificed on the cross just so we could have forgiveness of sins. Then that means at that point, God was trying to give us an image of what he looks like. So realize that throughout history of Christianity, whenever they are drawing or trying to picture the image of God, they'll draw this a giant white man with straight white hair falling down. That's all the image we know of God. Now the question I want to ask is, if that is not an image of what God is to look like, then what it is? Well, let's assume God is really white. If that's the case, what has a white idol got to do with a black person like me? And I remember those days in church, shortly before I left church, most of the times when church banners were being done, they'll still put this white image on the banner. And I'll ask again, why are you always putting white image on the banner? And I remember one time they told me to shut up. It's just a representation of what God, or just a representation so you can imagine God. Now, it's very important we also know that ancestors never saw God or met God. Per what I know, even if some met God, well, I don't know exactly what they saw. But then our ancestors believed that if, for instance, I'm hungry in this moment and I sit under a mango tree and the idea comes to me that eat this mango and be full, in that moment, I haven't met God, but it's a mango that calls me survivor. So at that particular moment, the mango is my God. If I'm stranded somewhere and somehow, like the story of Hagar, I'm able to strike a rock and get some water running out of that water, eventually it becomes my focal point of what the favor of God or the miracle of God look like. And when you look out through Old Testament, you realize that everything that was happening through the Old Testament was just a reflection of the image of God. So you realize that Jacob, when he fought on that mountain or desert, wherever it was, in the morning when he woke up, he set some stones, poured some oil as offering or libation, and made it a focal point of God. Other stories, so many different stories. I haven't read the Bible in a long time, so I don't know most of them. But it's very simple. The reason why ancestors also made idols to rely on was not because the idol itself was God, but as the definition told us, it was just a focal point or object of worship to contact the ancestors. So for instance, if a woman wanted to have babies and she tried so much she wasn't getting it, ideally if she visited a shrine, the priest will carve wooden dolls probably looking like this, just an image, depending on how many children she wants to have. And these wooden dolls will be given to her to put under her pillow, because life is all about imagination of how you want your life to be like. And so as she kept the doll there and slept on it every night, eventually that doll translated probably into a dream, and she could hold on to that dream for as long as she was waiting to receive that child. And it did work for people, So I don't know what the Bible was trying to drive at, to tell us that we shouldn't make graven image for ourselves. And yet still, look at the almighty Catholic Church. There's no Catholic Church or Anglican church you go to in Ghana that you don't find either the statue of Jesus or Mary or some saints or, these disciples being portrayed out there, and you actually find some church members going there to bow to these statues. Are they not equally idols? Well, unfortunately, these charismatic and Pentecostal churches try to separate themselves from that. But yes, still you go there and you see a lot of banners in there having this white image of a boy with this lamb behind his back. The question is, as a black person, what are you doing with the image of a white boy carrying a lamb on his back? And yes, so if an African recently my mom came into my house and saw a similar idol of this nature. It was even an idol of Africa, the image of Africa with a human face on it, and she thought it was so demonic, so carried that idol out of my house. And yes, though, she'll go to church to a place that is using the image of a white man as a point of worship and think that one is right. I think it's high time Christians come to understand that we are all doing the same thing. It just happens to be in different directions. As a black person, you have chosen to give honor to a white boy with a lamp on his shoulder. As a black person, I choose to make this my idol. It doesn't make me any different from you, but I choose to honor an idol that looks more like me than looking at an idol that looks so foreign to me. When you go to Asia, most of the idols look like them. When you go to India, they look like them. Europeans also decided to choose a white boy as their savior, and here in Africa, we still want to ascribe to that white boy. Well, it's your choice for Christians who still think that white boy is your savior. But I think it's high time Christians learn to understand that without our culture as the basis of life, that white boy has no footing in this. And then also, as a conscious community, let's learn to come together. Let's learn to even have traditional days where we are talking and having lectures on our traditions and culture, the beauty in the ways of our ancestors and how they've been profitable to us. The reason why the sea is an idol to us is because we get so many benefits from the sea. All your fish come from the sea, yet you sit in the church and condemn mami water spirits and all that. You get all your medicine, even pharmaceutical medicines come from basic plants and roots and herbs, and yet still you see a herbalist and think this herbalist is working with the devil or something like that. It's all part of the brainwashing. It's all part of the ignorance, because the more they taught you or gave you the opportunity to look at these idols because they look more like you, the more you neglected their God and made their gods powerless. And so the first thing they had to make sure they do was tell our ancestors. And that was after our ancestors wholeheartedly, warmly had welcomed them into their homes and their lands. Then they came to us and told us, your black image. So don't be surprised a lot of Christians and pastors' wives and even pastors are bleaching in church. It is the most degrading brainwashing of all time to see a pastor bleach just because through our generation they've been told the white man looks better than the black man, and so if you don't look white, your God is not white, then you are not surviving. But this is me, this is my culture, this is my tradition, and this is my object of worship. Long live Africa, long live the black race, long live our awakening as we call back the energy of our ancestors to replenish our land, to bring us peace, to bring us abundance, to bring us good health and much wisdom for the next generation. Peace.